It's 6:30 on the 20th of August, 2025. In the Taiwan Strait, USS Virginia suddenly picks up faint underwater noise. The sonar room goes silent for half a second. Then alarms pierce the air. Sailors sprint to battle stations, headphones tight, eyes locked on green lines. Beneath the waves, something big is moving. Chinese type 93 amperes. The ocean turns into a black maze of echoes. Cavitation spikes, then fade. A narrow bearing holds, steady, patient. One wrong nudge and steel meets steel. Another ping rolls back like thunder. Mark 48 versus USET 80. Both can kill from far, both hunt by sound. The captain steadies his voice. Rig for quiet, fan slow. Coffee cups stop rattling. No one breathes loud. The boat angles a few degrees, slipping into a colder layer. Sound bends here. It hides you like fog. If they shoot first, seconds decide everything. If we shoot first, there's no second chance to correct. The next whisper on sonar will choose who hunts and who vanishes. In the Taiwan Strait, merchant ships push through narrow sea lanes. These routes keep factories supplied, shelves stocked, and energy flowing back home. Every container that moves here ties Asia to America's daily life. USS Virginia patrols beneath them, unseen, tasked with guarding this fragile chain against China's silent hunters. If one freighter goes down, the shock ripples far. Insurance costs spike, companies reroute, and allies start doubting Washington's reach. Today, that chain faces a test. The Type 93 amperes is no clumsy intruder, it's Beijing's most advanced attack submarine, armed with USET 80 torpedoes that can lock on and chase. Its presence sends a clear message. China is willing to challenge U.S. submarines in their own backyard. For the crew of Virginia, this isn't just a cat and mouse chase. It's about proving who owns the undersea battle space. Inside the control room, sailors keep their voices low. Each bearing update is passed like a secret. A paint amperes Poseidon circles above, dropping sonobuoys to expand the net. Farther west, an Arleigh destroyer listens too, its towed array dragging miles behind. Together they form layers of detection, each one tightening around the Chinese sub. The U.S. commander knows the goal isn't to kill, but to corner, showing dominance without sparking a war. Yet the danger is real. If a torpedo leaves its tube, escalation becomes unstoppable. This standoff isn't abstract policy, it's two submarines trading silence. Each crew sweating in cramped steel tubes, waiting to see who flinches first. And that raises the question, if you were in command, would you order the first shot or hold fire until the very last moment? Drop your choice below, press 1 for shoot first, or 9 for hold fire. 6:42. The bearing on the Type 93 amperes sharpens. USS Virginia glides silently, but inside the sonar room, time feels stretched thin. A faint trace appears, then vanishes, possible torpedo tube flood. The captain doesn't wait. He orders a snapshot. One Mark 48, ad cap readied and fired. The tube floods, compressed air hisses, and with a muffled roar, the torpedo slides into the black. It's not armed yet, just a probe. Sometimes firing first forces the enemy to react. Above the waves, a paint amperes Poseidon scatters sonobuoys, each floating ear catching the ocean's whispers. Contacts align into a pattern. The 93 amperes is holding steady, aware it's being tracked. On the destroyer's deck, sailors bend over sonar screens, confirming hostile, no doubt. 6:47. Suddenly, the ocean roars with cavitation. The Chinese submarine surges, then cuts to dead silence, trying to vanish. The Poseidon's buoys keep the line. At that moment, the destroyer launches its helicopter. Rotor blades thunder, sending spray across the deck. The MH-60R dips low, sliding into its hunting pattern. The Seahawk hovers, lowering a long cable into the sea. At the end, dipping sonar, pinging the depths. Each pulse lights the ocean like a strobe. Operators inside the helo relay bearings back to Virginia. The net tightens. The Chinese sub is boxed. Then a metallic thud, unmistakable. Hydrophones on Virginia pick it up. Seconds later, the sonar operator confirms. Incoming torpedo, USET 80, range closing. The duel is no longer shadow play. A live weapon is in the water. Countermeasures, launch! The captain's voice cuts through. Decoys burst from Virginia, flooding the sea with false echoes. One USET 80 veers off, but another stays locked. The sub dives deeper, hull groaning as the pressure rises. Above, the helicopter joins the defense. Its crew drops a lightweight torpedo aimed to force the Chinese boat to maneuver. Water foams as the weapon enters, propeller biting hard. The MH-60R banks wide, sensors still pinging. Below, Virginia angles into colder water, trying to drag the USET-80 into a blind zone. Explosions rumble far off self-destructs or decoy hits. One Mark 48 keeps running, steady and relentless. In the 93 amperes, their crew must hear it too, a growing buzz in the steel. Now both sides face the moment, fire again, and risk escalation or break off before disaster. 6:55. The ocean is alive with echoes. Virginia holds steady in the deep, but the Chinese 93 amperes refuses to slip away. Instead, it circles, searching for an angle. Above, an MH-60R Seahawk hovers, rotors hammering the sky. Its dipping sonar pulses into the sea, painting the chase. Each return confirms the 93 amperes is still there, aggressive, holding close. On board the destroyer, the Hilo team readies another run. A second MH-60 lifts off, banking hard toward the buoy field dropped earlier by the Poseidon. Now 2 helicopters sweep the contact area, their sonars overlapping. The net grows tighter. The Chinese sub is trapped in a cage of sound. 6:58. A metallic clank. The sonar operator aboard Virginia stiffens. Possible tube flood. New launch detected. Seconds later, the unmistakable transient rings out. Another USET 80 torpedo is in the water. Countermeasures, launch! Decoys burst free, flooding the sea with false tones. One torpedo swerves wide, but another keeps its track. Virginia dives deeper, hull creaking as pressure mounts. From above, sonar screens flicker, the torpedo is hot, chasing. The Seahawk drops a lightweight torpedo, aiming to disrupt the 93 amperes. Explosions rumble far away, decoy kills or self-destructs. Yet tension doesn't ease. The Chinese sub isn't fleeing. It's testing how far the Americans will go. On the destroyer's bridge, officers debate anti-sub rockets, but the captain holds too risky. Every second stretches thin. Virginia's commander knows. Torpedoes are costly, decoys finite. For the Chinese crew, the risk is death. But for Beijing, even losing a sub is cheaper than losing face. The duel has shifted into endurance and will. Sweat drips, hands shake, yet discipline holds. Above, the Seahawk circles again, sonar cable slicing the water, each ping narrowing the enemy's options. In the silence of the control room, the thought hangs. One mistake, one flare of aggression, and the line to open war snaps. And so we turn it to you. If you commanded this duel, would you press 1 to strike first or 9 to hold back? Comment below and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss how this standoff ends. 7-5. Just as the net seems unbreakable, sonar picks up something new. 2 return small, fast, running beneath the surface. The captain frowns. These are not submarines. They're unmanned underwater vehicles, drones. Beijing's hidden ace. The UUVs slice through the water, harder to track than a full-sized boat. Each carries a lightweight torpedo, enough to cripple if it lands. They rush toward the decoys trailing behind Virginia. On sonar, their signatures weave and dart like predators. The duel shifts again. The Seahawk above detects them too. Dipping sonar, pulsing hard. Fast movers, 2, bearing northeast, splitting wide. The crew radios. Poseidon confirms from higher altitude, sonobuoys flashing back identical data. For the first time, the American screen feels stretched thin. Target drones. The destroyer's team orders. The helicopter banks, releasing a torpedo into one path. Spray bursts as it hits the water, engine alive. Below, Virginia swings its bow. A Mark 48 launched toward the other. The first drone vanishes in a muffled explosion, helicopter kill. For a moment, relief. but the second accelerates, zigzagging, closing on Virginia. Alarms wail. The sub rolls into a desperate turn, hull groaning. Another decoy launches, flooding the sea with bubbles. The drone hesitates, then cuts straight back onto the track. The crew holds their breath. This is not the duel they trained for. Drones are expendable, unpredictable, and they can arrive in numbers. For a submarine built to duel peers, this is a nightmare. The captain studies the plot. One mistake and his crew is lost, but delay means the drone closes to kill range. Every system hums, operators waiting for his word. 7:15. The last drone charges. Inside Virginia, klaxons scream, red lights flashing. Torpedo in the water! The sonar operator's voice is sharp. The captain wastes no time. Shoot, Tube 4! A Mark 48 leaps into the sea, propeller biting hard. The duel condenses into seconds. The torpedo races out, while the drone bears down on Virginia's hull. The submarine banks into a brutal turn, bolts groaning as pressure mounts. The ocean is alive with noise. Sonar pings from above. Countermeasure pops. The buzz of weapons chasing prey. Above, the MH-60R Seahawk hovers low, dipping sonar, stabbing the depths. Its crew calls out bearings, guiding Virginia's fire. A second Seahawk circles wider, ready to drop another torpedo if the 93 amperes re-engages. Higher up, Poseidon orbits, feeding the net with sonobuoys. The first drone vanishes in a muffled explosion direct hit. The crew exhales, but only briefly. A second contact appears, moving fast. Another drone, delayed, clever, closing hard. Alarms shriek again. Virginia dives deeper, throwing a knuckle of turbulence. The hull shudders, instruments rattle. Countermeasure, launch! A decoy bursts into a cloud of bubbles. For a moment, the drone veers, then corrects, charging straight. The captain snaps. Tube 5 fire! Another Mark 48, tears free, racing head-on. Seconds stretch. Then a thunderous detonation shakes the boat. Lights flicker, mugs crash. Silence broken only by the hiss of air. Both drones are gone. Above, the Seahawk reports no fresh contacts. Poseidon confirms. The 93 amperes has broken off, retreating east under noise. The destroyer holds fire, satisfied the enemy has backed down. Damage control teams sweep the compartments with flashlights, checking valves and frames. A scorched breaker is reset. A hairline crack on a gauge, taped and tagged, no flooding, no fires. The captain holds at depth, riding the cold layer while a Seahawk makes one last dip, and Poseidon calls the buoy field cold. The climax leaves the crew drained, uniforms soaked, nerves raw. They survive submarine, torpedoes, and drones. But all know this is a warning. Undersea war is changing, and now it's your choice. In a moment where hesitation could mean destruction, would you press 1 to strike first or 9 to hold steady? Comment below and subscribe so you don't miss the next showdown. 7:30. The ocean slowly calms. Virginia stays deep, her crew straining to hear through the fading echoes. Above, the Seahawk makes a final slow orbit, dipping sonar one last time before cutting cable and climbing back toward the destroyer. Higher still, the Poseidon banks wide, its sonobuoy grid reporting silence. The result: survival. Virginia fought off torpedoes, drones, and the threat of a peer submarine. The layered defense worked submarine, destroyer, aircraft, all weaving a shield that held. But victory came at a cost. Mark 48 are precious, decoys limited. Against swarms of cheap drones, the math feels uneasy. The damage control report confirms. Stress marks on the hull, a scorched panel reset, cracked gauges taped and tagged, no flooding, no fire. The crew exhales, they live to fight again. Yet the silence in the control room is heavy. Everyone knows this wasn't just a duel, it was a rehearsal for the wars to come. Strategically, the message is clear. America can still dominate undersea, combining submarine stealth with the eyes and ears of air and surface partners. The Seahawk's rapid strikes and Poseidon's vast reach proved decisive, boxing in the 93 amperes and hunting its drones. But Beijing's new playbook is clear too. Expendable machines can push even the best boats to the edge. On the destroyer's bridge, officers look out at the calm sea. They know what it hides. Contests invisible to the world above. Moments where silence decides fates. In Washington, this fight will be counted as proof of dominance. In Beijing, it may be written as a lesson in persistence. For the men aboard Virginia, it is simpler. They won. But the thought lingers. What happens when the swarm doubles? When torpedoes launch from shore as drones attack below? The next fight could be faster, harder, less forgiving. And so the question falls to you. In a world where even victory feels fragile, should America press 1 to hit harder first, or 9 to hold and wait? Drop your answer below and subscribe so you don't miss the battles waiting just beyond the horizon. 12:04 UTC, the 11th of August, 2025. The South China Sea is deceptively calm. Sunlight glints off the turquoise waters near Scarborough Shoal, but the stillness is about to shatter. Just 12 nautical miles from the reef, the Philippine Coast Guard cutter BRP Sulawan pushes north, her white hull slicing through the gentle swell. She's not alone. 2 small civilian relief boats follow close behind, loaded with sacks of rice, jugs of water, and drums of fuel for local fishermen. But behind them, trouble is closing in. A Chinese Coast Guard cutter, hull number CCG 3104, is on an intercept course, its engines thundering at full power. Twin water cannons unleash roaring jets, the streams lashing across Sulawan's bow like liquid steel whips. At this range, every blast slams into the Philippine vessel with the force of a sledgehammer strong enough to shatter windows, bend antenna masts, and knock a crewman overboard in seconds. And then, from the haze off the port side, a darker, more menacing silhouette emerges, the sharp, angular lines of a People's Liberation Army Navy destroyer, hull number 164. This is no patrol boat. It's a Type 52D guided missile destroyer, bristling with weapon systems, vertical launch cells, anti-ship missiles, long-range radar. It moves fast and steady, cutting through contested waters without hesitation. In seconds, the 3 ships are locked into a narrowing triangle of open sea. The Chinese Coast Guard cutter veers to block the Sulawan's path. The destroyer bears down from the side, and every heartbeat brings them closer to a collision course that no one seems ready to break. Scarborough Shoal may look like nothing more than a ring of shallow reefs and turquoise lagoons, but in the South China Sea, it's a powder keg. Lying just 124 nautical miles off Luzon's coastline, it sits well within the Philippines' 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, as recognized under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. On paper, that should make it Philippine territory. In reality, China seized control in 2012 after a tense maritime standoff and has never left. Since then, Beijing has maintained a near constant presence, rotating Coast Guard cutters, maritime militia trawlers, and when necessary, full-fledged warships. For Manila, every approach to Scarborough is a test of sovereignty. For Beijing, every interception is a statement of dominance. The reef's location is strategically vital, close enough to Philippine shores to challenge their security, yet far enough into the South China Sea to serve as a launch point for broader control over shipping lanes. On the 11th of August, the Sulawan's mission seemed simple: escort 2 relief craft to fishing grounds near the shoal, deliver supplies, and return to port. But in these waters, simple rarely stays that way. Any Philippine vessel venturing near Scarborough is shadowed, sometimes harassed, by Chinese ships, and today would prove no different. As soon as the Sulawan cleared the shoal's shadow, the chase intensified. The Chinese Coast Guard cutter CCG 3104, a 1,500-ton vessel built for intimidation as much as enforcement, surged forward. Spray boiled off its bow, engines straining at near maximum output. Its target was clear: the Philippine patrol ship and the 2 slow-moving civilian boats trailing behind her. The cutter's water cannons roared again, unleashing high-pressure blasts that swept across Sulawan's decks. On paper, water cannons are non-lethal. In reality, at close range, they can shatter reinforced glass, rip communication antennas from their mounts, and flood exposed compartments. Every blast forced Sulawan's crew to duck behind armored shields, gripping rails to stay upright on the rolling sea. But today's pursuit had a dangerous twist. Instead of following directly in Suluan's wake, CCG 3104's captain swung wide to port, angling to cut across the Philippine ship's bow, a textbook interception maneuver meant to force a target off course. At speeds pushing 20 knots, the margin for error was razor thin. From the bridge of the Suluan, repeated radio calls crackled into the void. Chinese Coast Guard, this is BRP Suluan. Alter course immediately. No reply. Only the cutter's sirens wailed, blending with the hiss of the cannons. Meanwhile, the PLA Navy destroyer held its own steady track, a silent looming wall of steel off to the side. In theory, vessels flying the same flag should coordinate. But here, with adrenaline high and tempers hot, coordination was about to break down in the most spectacular way possible. Spray shredded the daylight as the PLA Navy destroyer grew in the glass, hull number 164 riding a steady port track. Off her bow, the Chinese Coast Guard cutter CCG 3104 was no longer simply tailing BRP Suluan. It had swung wide to port for a classic bow-crossing intercept, eyes and adrenaline fixed on the Philippine ship. That line, however, now intersected the destroyer's path. On the Suluan's bridge, the bearing lines converged like jaws. The destroyer signaled and sounded her horn. CCG 3104, already committed, kept her angle. At roughly 20 knots, there was no time, no sea room, no graceful exit. The cutter's knife bow punched into 164's port quarter with a thunderous, hollow boom that rolled across the flat water and hammered every bulkhead within earshot. Metal failed first. The cutter's stem folded inward and upward, buckling around the forward gun mount. The shield twisted, rivets sheared, and deck seams split like zippers as shock ran aft. For the warship, punishment was superficial but ugly. Long, ragged gouges along the port plating, paint peeled to silver, stanchions bent, fittings jarred loose. The whole hull shuddered, and men stumbled on steel that suddenly felt alive. Forward on CCG 3104, crew who had been clustered at the rail vanished in the instant of impact, thrown flat, dragged out of sight by spray, or retreating behind the torn forecastle. Sirens died. The water cannons fell silent. For a heartbeat, the only sound was wind and the slow slap of swell against torn metal. Then, systems caught up with reality. The destroyer's horn bellowed again. Damage control teams spilled along the port side. The cutter wallowed with her bow low, engines idled, steering sluggish. Operationally, she was done. A harassment run had ended in friendly steel against friendly steel under foreign eyes and open sky. From the deck of the BRP Suluan, disbelief rippled through the crew. Seconds earlier, they had braced for another blast from the water cannons. Instead, they watched the pursuing cutter crumple into its own Navy's destroyer, a collision so loud it seemed to shake the air itself. Through binoculars, Philippine officers saw Chinese deckhands staggering, some clutching railings, others disappearing entirely behind the mangled bow. The Suluan's radio operator wasted no time. On an open channel, in clear English, "Chinese vessel, we can provide medical assistance. We can assist in search and rescue." Silence. The offer was repeated, this time in Mandarin. Still nothing. On the destroyer, damage control teams moved methodically along the scraped port plating, assessing. On the cutter, crew gathered aft, far from the buckled foredeck, their movements slow and deliberate. It was clear they were injured, if not physically. Then by the sudden shock of their mission collapsing in front of them. From a humanitarian standpoint, refusing help seemed unthinkable. But in these waters, politics outweighs pragmatism. Accepting aid from the very ship you'd been harassing minutes earlier would be a public relations defeat. Better to struggle alone than to admit vulnerability under the watchful eyes of your opponent. Meanwhile, the civilian relief boats, sensing the tension, slipped out of sight to the north. For them, this was supposed to be routine food and fuel for fishermen. Instead, they'd just witnessed an international embarrassment unfold in real time, one that neither side would forget quickly. Within hours, Manila moved to seize the narrative. Philippine Coast Guard spokesman Commodore J. Terriella addressed reporters, calling the incident atrocious and inane behavior that blatantly violated COLREGs, the international regulations for preventing collisions at sea. He stressed that the cutter's maneuver had not only endangered the Suluan's crew, but also risked lives aboard all three ships, including China's own destroyer. Terriella confirmed what the radio logs already showed. "We offered medical, search, and rescue assistance immediately after the collision. They refused." That says a lot. The refusal, he implied, reinforced the Philippine stance that China would prioritize saving face over ensuring safety. In Beijing, the tone was strikingly different. Chinese Coast Guard spokesman Gan Yu acknowledged there had been a maritime encounter but omitted any mention of a collision. Instead, he framed the operation as monitoring, pressing, blocking, and controlling actions he described as lawful enforcement within what China calls its territorial waters. State media carried no images of the crippled CCG 3104, and no footage surfaced from official sources. The diplomatic channel stayed quiet. There was no joint investigation, no hotline calls, no public statement from either navy. For outside observers, the silence was telling. In the South China Sea, what's not said after an incident can speak just as loudly as the event itself. Scarborough Shoal is far more than a scattering of reefs and sandbanks. Sitting well inside the Philippines' 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, it's a strategic chess piece in one of the world's busiest maritime corridors. Under the 2016 Permanent Court of Arbitration ruling, China's claim over the shoal was deemed invalid under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Beijing, however, rejected the ruling outright and has maintained control since 2012, enforcing a de facto blockade with a rotating mix of Coast Guard cutters, maritime militia vessels, when needed, warships. For Manila, every patrol near Scarborough is a declaration: we will not concede our rights. For Beijing, every interception reinforces a different truth. Control rests with the ships physically present, not with court rulings in The Hague. The 11th of August collision didn't happen in isolation. It's part of a broader pattern of so-called gray zone tactics, actions designed to assert dominance without triggering outright war. These range from water cannon harassment and dangerous blocking maneuvers to more provocative measures like using high-powered lasers to temporarily blind Philippine sailors, ramming fishing vessels, and obstructing resupply missions to outposts in the Spratlys. The stakes extend beyond sovereignty. The South China Sea handles over 60% of global maritime trade, worth an estimated $3.4 trillion annually. Oil tankers, container ships, and bulk carriers pass through daily, making the region an economic artery for the world. Any prolonged disruption here could ripple across the global economy in days. Militarily, Scarborough's position is equally potent. China's network of militarized artificial islands already gives the PLA Navy surveillance and strike capability across much of the sea. Developing Scarborough into a similar outpost would extend that reach alarmingly close to the Philippine mainland, further tightening Beijing's control over critical shipping lanes. Against this backdrop, the 11th of August incident becomes more than just an embarrassing mishap. It's a reminder that in the high-stakes game of presence and perception, even allies under the same flag can collide when aggressive tactics override coordination. At sea, collisions between rival ships are tense enough, but when friendly steel crashes into friendly steel, it exposes the razor's edge these gray zone confrontations walk every day. On the 11th of August, a high-speed harassment run meant to intimidate a smaller Philippine vessel instead crippled one of China's own Coast Guard cutters, and did so under the watchful eyes of the very crew it was chasing. For Manila, the incident is now another entry in a growing record of unsafe Chinese maneuvers in contested waters. It reinforces their message to domestic and international audiences that Philippine crews operate within the bounds of law, and that Beijing's tactics risk escalation as much as they risk lives. For Beijing, silence is the strategy. No images of damage, no public acknowledgement of the collision, just the official framing of a routine patrol within Chinese waters. In this narrative, nothing unusual happened at all. The less said, the better for maintaining the image of control. But the reality at Scarborough Shoal is harder to bury. the reef remains a flashpoint where sovereignty claims economic stakes and military posturing intersect. And while water cannons and blocking maneuvers may seem a step removed from open combat, the 11th of August proved they can spiral into real accidents with real consequences. So here's the question. Was this simply an accident born of overconfidence, or a high-risk intimidation tactic that spectacularly backfired? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to help bring more true maritime stories to the surface, consider joining our channel's fleet. You'll get loyalty badges, priority replies, and help us keep the deep dives coming. Out here, it's not just the size of your ship that counts, it's whether you're steering it in the right direction.